Hello, everybody out there in Futureproofing Nation. Today is a good day in our world. We are launching a book, maybe a movement. There seems to be a lot of things around gender reveal kind of things. I'm not too sure if there's a specific thing for this one, Andrea, that we're going to cover off today. But my name's Sean Moffitt. I am both a founder of and author now of Futureproofing Next. I want to invite my co-author, my co-managing director, my co-everything in life, Andrea Cates, to chime in here. Oh, you may be muted.
We're really excited. We're finally launching. It's not a book, it's a movement. Yes, Futureproofing Next, the future beyond innovation. And I'm Andrea Cates. And today we're here to talk about all things Futureproofing Next, including the hatching, the launching, the giving birth to the book.
Yeah, we're used to interviewing a lot of other people, so I guess we are now turning a spotlight on ourselves today. And with some level of justification, we have spent I don't know how much time. I think we've probably written 10,000 pages to get down to the 240 some odd that we have, Andrea. So yeah, a little bit of sweat equity helps. But we know we weren't the only people along for the ride here. There have been collaborators. There have been people that have gone out of their way to spend time with us, to be interviewed. Andrea, any thoughts on the community that's kind of surfaced around Futureproofing Next?
Well, they always say it takes a village. This is actually incredible. We were trying to do the acknowledgements for the book. We've been at this for years. We are really lucky because today on this particular webcast and during the week, we have people who are part of this story. So we have been field testing. We have been looking at research and experiences from 13,000 teams. We have people that we've done projects with in virtually every industry. We have fallen on our faces. We have gotten on airplanes and done a good job, a bad job, and a better job. And a lot of the people that have seen the scar tissue of how this book came about are on the call today. So we're excited about that. And also we're hoping that this is, Sean and I wrote books before. So we've had our bestseller first books, which has really been a wonderful experience. It's kind of how we met. We'll give our origin story in a little bit. But this is really the next stage in our careers as well, because we're all about community. We are hoping that this book becomes something that we can all continue to learn from and that we can do this together, that we future-proof, that it's a verb, not just a book. So back to you, Sean.
No, I love it. And I think we've got this strange interstate looking logo on here called Futureproofing 66. We're having a separate session with a group of really intimate collaborators that have worked with us this Thursday, and so kind of everybody gets their take on it this week. So if you feel like you're one of them, then join us there too, because we have a lot to be doing over the next little while. So I looked on Amazon. There's about 60,000 innovation books. 60,000 books. Surely we don't need another innovation book, Andrea, right? Like why, give me the one sentence here. Like why this one?
Two things. One is the books are great. There's so much in them, but there's a Borges short story called The Library of Babel, where every single truth in the world is in the library, but there's no index. So the first thing that Sean and I were trying to do is index all of this. What is it that people are really trying to get to today in 2020 so that we can save them the time of reading all the other books. Hopefully they can then go and do a deeper dive into those books as well. So that's number one. And the second thing is that we have a different vantage point. So when a lot of the books were written, 1989, 1999, 2009, going on and on, they were written within the context of what was happening in business, quite frankly. And so things are super different now. There's this notion now that we have agency over the future, so we don't have to just do predictive analysis all the time to figure out what will happen as if it's a big mystery and we have no agency over that. So by the way, thank you to Ennis Olson for that insight. Number two is that, the guidebook concept is really important. We don't think everybody should use one tool. We love business model canvases. It's not a one tool fits all world. And so what are the tools that really work? And so this is part of the other thing is we always wanted books that had partly on the left-hand side, some really great tools and visuals and things that we could get our arms around. And then on the other side of the page, the narrative, the case studies, the proof. And so that's how we wrote this book. It's the book we kind of wanted to write the first time, but not every publishing house would get into that concept. So we decided to do it this way ourselves. So it's tools with explanations, and hopefully, I call it like the Gideon Bible in every drawer. You go into the hotel, wherever you are in business, you open a page and you can get inspiration and something to guide you to the next step.
I love it. The great thing about working with you, Andrea, is we've worked on this for how long? And then you come up with this whole index card thing, which I hadn't heard out of your mouth before. So just always generative in terms of stuff. I'd only add that because I was looking at a whole bunch of colleagues' work. So, we have a number of colleagues, close, intimate friends of ours that work in the innovation space. And I don't think we're actually standing on their shoulders, I suppose. And I was trying to think, we have a really distinctive argument, but it's different. I think it's for a practitioner. And so that was kind of the thing that I was leaning to last night. I was looking at all these categorizations of innovation. They're all good. We can learn a lot from them. But, our focus on this book, I think, has been the practitioner, the people that are actually doing this, and less about maybe trying to explain phenomena or make an academic kind of understanding of what's going on. So that would be my small little addition. It's interesting. I was able to surface photos here, photos that make us look a little bit younger, which I don't know if that should concern us or not, but myself and Andrea were in the McGraw-Hill stable of authors back in the early, 2010s, I guess. She wrote a book called Find Your Next. I wrote a book called Wikibrands. And we got introduced to each other. So we should actually thank traditional publishing, even though we're taking a different tact with this one. We did some work. I helped Andrea launch her book. Andrea was inordinately helpful with my book. We got together in Boston. There she is, looking happy at a Fenway Park at Boston Red Sox game. I was elated. I'm not too sure if Andrea was, but
yeah, I didn't know that if a game was kind of still, if someone had already won and it was the last inning, that you didn't play out the last part of the inning. Like that was news to me. So that was very helpful, Sean. Thank you for that.
I think this was April 2013, if I recall, and it went extra innings, and Andrea was a trooper. She was able to hang out for the whole part. And then I was looking at our genesis of going back and forth over the years, and when we kind of triggered the idea of starting this book and maybe a movement. January 10th, 2018, we had an idea. Obviously, our emails were great. You were great. You had great insight. But I think the seed, the germ of what we were launching today started back on January 10th. So for other people that are out there thinking about writing books, sometimes it takes a while to marinate these things and see where they end up. So
I have a question for you, Sean.
Sure.
So what was it that you thought was missing? So January 2018, we had this conversation. What sparked your interest? And you know what? Yeah, there's 60,000 fantastic books, but the world needs another one.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you said it earlier in terms of, we're both previous clients, and from a client perspective, not from a reader perspective or from a, wow, that would make a good presentation perspective. From a true, I'm in the thick of it. I deal with the same 20 people every day in my world. I'm not getting the lens and insight that I could have if somebody, maybe like myself, decided to spend 2 years thinking very, very deeply about the same things that I might have, but just didn't have the time. And so, this isn't about more ideas. This isn't about, fancier ideas. This is about making those ideas work. And so that was kind of a driving force for me in this book. Back to, you're the same question to you, Andrea. Is there if you go back to that initial stage, what was your initial thought?
Well, I was right in the midst of, right on the tail end of doing a lot of stuff in the lean startup world. I was a CEO of a software company, and we had all these teams going through the agile and the lean, and they're, really great stuff, lean startup. But what we kept seeing was this moment, which I now call the future-proofing moment, where either these great teams that had fantastic ideas didn't get across the finish line, couldn't get to delivery, And thank you to Lanny Cohen and the team at Capgemini for reminding us of the notion of delivery as one of the big important parts of corporate innovation. And the second thing that was happening was that we saw that there were teams that were equipped with different things. So you kind of bring in a baseball player and I'm going to try to use sports analogies here, be careful. A hockey puck and a baseball player and a football quarterback, and that's about all the sports I can think of. But you brought them all into this wonderful place called a corporation or a company or a startup or scale up. And they all had fantastic tools. They all had fantastic approaches, but they weren't in harmony and they didn't have the same goal in mind. And so, you take the hockey puck and you try to get it across first base. I'm not sure if I'm doing this right, but
doing so well until then. So
okay,
well.
but it's a problem, because you're guiding something toward a goal that you have in your mind with analogies and images you have, but you're in the wrong sport. And so we wanted to bring all that together and come up with, it's kind of obnoxious to say this, but we thought that we would get the unifying principle, an operating system for corporate innovation or scale up innovation. That was our idea, and it was hard to figure out. So
certainly no shortage of ambition on this one, Andrea. I mean, I think we've torn through so much here. And it was interesting because we were about to launch March 27th. We had the book ready to go, I want to say March 3rd. And then all of a sudden, I think we all know what happened. And we're like, we can't get anybody to engage past the week that we're in, never mind the future. And so, this, similar to, I'm not too sure if it works in school land where it's like your exam gets delayed to the next week and you actually get a better test result. But I'm going to go with that as a metaphor here, because I think using the last 4 to 5 months that we have to actually improve, to optimize, I think has led to a better result. I don't know if you have thoughts around the pandemic, Andrea.
No, I just think that you can't ignore, when you're talking about future proofing, and you come out right before the insights from a pandemic are upon us, it's tone deaf. Yeah, it's tone deaf. And so at least I was a little frustrated, like, oh no, we have to take in something new. That will always be the case. We have this notion, we'll talk later about perpetual refresh. You have to constantly be learning. But I tell this story of what 9/11, where I was 9/11. I was in this workshop in Park City, Utah, where it was supposed to be like, figure out your life and spend 5 days really figuring out what you want to do next. And it was this fantastic, workshop. Sunday, we did all this really deep stuff. Monday, we did all this really deep stuff. Tuesday morning, it was 9/11. And I'm like, let's keep going. Like, come on, guys. We paid all this money. We're here in the mountains. We're going to get our lives together. And brilliantly, the facilitator said, when something as dramatic as this occurs, you have to stop what you're doing and you have to recast your perspective. And so that's what Sean and I thought of is, it's time to say, wait a minute, we can't just go to print. We have to think again what these large forces of the future will mean in terms of business and strategy.
And it's interesting. We actually took the time as well. Interesting timing on this one, because it was kind of probably first or second week of March where we said, we should probably not do this right now. And instead, we wrote a blog post about the pandemic, which is now turned into this global guild of sorts. We've got this thing called the Gray Swan Guild. And so a little bit of shout out for the Gray Swan, but it's kind of been an interesting community building experiment of 500 really interesting people around the world getting together and kind of passionately trying to make sense of this pandemic. So yeah, from crisis comes opportunity, I suppose. So we have two different versions, and authors can have this. Sometimes, I wrote with Mike Dover the first time I wrote a book called Wiki Brands. On this one, we had two slightly different objectives that came together, I think, at the same place. For me, there were two books in my young professional life that I thought, oh my God, I love this book, and I took it everywhere. I think I've probably read The Tipping Point 4 or 5 times. The Purple Cow was something that I knew it was kind of like not high literature. I don't think Seth Godin ever wanted it to be that way, but it just had really interesting nuggets of wisdom that I could take with me to any of the meetings and feel smarter for it as I was going to all my meetings within Procter and Gamble. And so my hope on this one was this could become the dog-eared kind of sitting on the corner of your desk page turner that you throw into your bag when you go on travel flights, and you hang out on your desk when you need it, and refer back to it when you need to as well. So that was kind of my perspective on this one. Andrea, you've got a different perspective, but somehow two objectives collide into the same kind of production here. You want to talk to me about yours?
One of my mentors, and I'm going to do a lot of shout outs because we are really in a state of gratitude about all the people that have taught us things. So Matt Winter was the CEO at the time of Allstate, I think. And we were working on a project, and he was just this really inspiring leader, had a combination of many different perspectives, and was very buttoned up from my perspective. And I remember walking into his office, and you had the typical, no, there's nothing wrong with these people I'm about to mention, but Michael Porter books and the strategic Harvard kinds of books. And there was one book that was like a red, had an alarm going off when I looked at it. And it was a book called Business Model Generation. So I'm dating this story now. And it looked kind of cartoonish. It had a different shape. When you opened it, it had case studies. Absolutely. I think the Nespresso case study was written in there, but it had a lot of illustrations, and it was not the book that I would picture a CEO like Matt Winter having on his bookshelf. And yet it was the beginning of new thinking for the digital age, and the new thinking around agile innovation in that company. And to their credit, they applied open innovation, like the Henry Chesbrough initiatives and other initiatives and mindsets really well. And I thought, what is the kind of book, and I know some of these bookshelves are virtual, what is the kind of book that's worthy of being on Mark Benioff from Salesforce, his bookshelf? He's read everything. He's written a book called Trailblazer. What is a book that's worthy of being on Satya Nadella's bookshelf from Microsoft? And he wrote a book called Hit Refresh around the turnaround of Microsoft. So our aspirations were high, but we really wanted to have something that would be as game-changing as looking at business model generation on Matt's bookshelf. And it's important to be able to lead leaders, not just in the United States, but all over the world, in thinking differently to look at today's realities and bring them to the next level.
That's great. And we've actually built a Changemakers bookshelf. We have 99 books there. I guess implicitly, we do everything in factors of 11, because why just do 10 when you can do 11? But I think implicitly, we probably left the 100th book off, just knowing that ours would be coming down and just being able to squeeze it into that little spot on the shelf, right? Well, here's the questions we get. We get them from our friends, we get them from our family, we get them from other people. Some people are really curious. Other people are like, all right, this is party conversation, but I'm not as interested in your world. But, what's it about? Why is it different and special? Who's it for? What's inside it? What does it look like? How do I get involved? What's next? Those are kind of the 7 kind of basic things I think most authors probably get. We're going to try to tackle as many of them as we can in a shortened version of what the book is. I guess that's maybe the reason why you buy the book. But let's see if we can tackle these, Andrea.
Yeah, I'm going to let you start with the first one. So thousands of hours, hundreds of interviews, tens of tools, 21, there's never 20, 21 reasons.
No, can't have even numbers here. We got to paint out the lines. Yeah, you know what? I somehow am envious of certain authors that just have this one specific idea that they want to run with on their book and make their entire book about that, right? I think I read Homo Sapiens recently, and as much as there was a lot of different things in there, it was just like, wow, this is the history of our species. That's an interesting kind of take on it, and it was pretty much unidimensional. He's going to cover that. He's going to cover it in chapter 2 and chapter 3 and chapter 4. We have a different mission here. I think innovation is a much larger landscape than even people that live and breathe in the space consider it to be. And so we have looked at this from so many different angles and have curated, I think, we're a little bit biased, I guess, but one of the better versions of, look, if you're getting into the change game, and we even resist using the word innovation, here is a roster of different resources and things you should be looking at. So there's 21 reasons. We've listed them, or we've recapped them later, but we've packaged them up into 4 different versions. And I think our sub-tagline for the book is, the future beyond innovation. We think we're painting it. We've got 5 different things that we've covered here. And I thought, you know what, we can't cover all 21. As much as we could, Andrea, we would just talk faster, and that wouldn't be good either. So we're going to try to cover off 2 of these in each one of these sections, with deference to the 3 that we don't cover off, because there's so many good reasons why to write it. Andrea, I think, we've looked historically at, the last century of innovation, and there have been movements that have just created new momentum and new progress within the space. We've got 10 of them sitting beside our book. And we're truly advocates of some of these. Other ones, we've kind of seen maybe some of the aging of them to actually go, wow, that maybe seems more lazy than they should. But as we look into a decade that is already being faced with a huge pandemic, I know you've got a big election down south too, which is going to dominate some headlines. We have had more change in the last year, or call it even 6 months, than we might have in the last decade, that we thought this is a great time to launch a book that's all about the future beyond innovation. Any thoughts on?
Well, first of all, thanks for calling the United States down south. We really love that, Mr. Toronto. That's very helpful. We've never been called down south.
I have not rooted myself. Yes, I am a Canadian.
So I'm going to take us back to a moment. My insights have come in spurts and moments. So there was a moment where, once again, shout out to Danae Ringelman, who was a student at University of California, Berkeley. And I was teaching the early Find Your Next stuff. So it was about 10 plus years ago, and field testing some of the early thinking about cross-industry innovation. And Danae raised her hand and said, and once again, first thing she said is, I've got this idea for a company called Indiegogo. I said, well, that's a horrible name. So there goes that credit to my insight. But anyway, but Danae had this great question. She said, what is it about today, which was 10 years ago, today, that makes it the right time for this type of business? Can you go through the history of the world and match the business strategies that were popular and effective at the time to the moment in history and explain why? And I had about 15 minutes left in the lecture, and I said, that is a great question. I am going to sit with that question because that's a really good question. So that's, as you know, Sean, the genesis of how you and I came up with this thought, that for a time in business where X is occurring in the world, Y is the correct, not WHY, but Y is the correct reason to use these approaches. So for instance, we won't go through all of these because it would be an hour-long lecture at Berkeley again. But first of all, you have things like, I'll just pick a couple, like a mindset around incrementalism can come from a mindset. Let's imagine Henry Ford and conveyor belts, right? And in the early days, truly what you needed to do to get ahead in a world that was becoming industrialized was to have a way of being efficient and operational excellence and those kinds of things. And so you had to design the kind of industrial age and the industrial world with that mindset. The thought of something coming at you really fast from a completely other dimension was probably not the reality. And so we're not faulting any of these for being exactly the right approach at exactly that moment in history. So let's look at something like, design thinking. There was an age where, let's imagine the Toyota way, right? And Six Sigma and the importance in the 80s of total quality management and things where it's really important to make sure you have 0 defects, right? And Japanese automobiles, shockingly, came to confront American automobiles, automobiles made down south in the United States. And, suddenly you realize that wasn't the game anymore, that doing things, that focusing on that wasn't enough. And so you end up with design thinking because there weren't enough ideas on the table. And working with, in those days, we were lucky, to collaborate with people like IDEO and really learn from people who are inventing design thinking. You have to think differently. You have to have empathy toward customers. And so for that era where you needed to find new thinking and understand customer requirements, not just give them a slogan, they'll buy a car, but really understand what's the next thing that might be on the horizon, that required a very different discipline, design thinking. And you can go on through the ages that each of these was perfectly matched to the moment, the software era and the SaaS, software as a service era, going into a mindset around software development and agile as a mindset. So we believe that going for people who are on a podcast and can't see this, that if you start with stage gate, SWOT, 5 forces in the 79, 6 Sigma in the early 80s, design thinking, agile, benchmarking, blue ocean. We would also say open innovation, lean startup, blitz scaling. Those were all perfect for then. And we would love to make the case that future proofing is for the 2020s and beyond.
And I would just add a couple things. I actually totaled up just the things that we've looked at previously and go, wow, you know what? That's not a great argument, but there's part of what they've done here, which is really interesting. And there's about 60 schools of thinking that have gone into our book. And so it's interesting to total them up. I thought we would be around 20 or 30, Andrea, but there's really 60 different schools that we've looked at and said, can we look at it with a 2020 lens? My presumption is as well, there may be a new book for the 2030s. We may put ourselves out of business in the true spirit of, what is the next thing? My hope is we're still alive and kicking, Andrea, and there's probably a derivative of our book, but things like AI and a few other things may actually change how innovation gets done a decade from now. So
yeah, I think it'll be an implant in our brains.
It'd be great. You know what? Amazing alignment, I think. Let's talk about this because I think we've kind of looked at a range of different things, and under 5 different things, everybody knows the 3 bears story and the Goldilocks and how she liked her porridge kind of just right. And there are different points of view on this, but we think that obviously any kind of school of innovation should cover off front end and back end innovation. Like it's a full. I find one maddening thing when I do read some of our peer set is, innovation just magically shows up and you're put in place and then there's this great individual that gets to control innovation. And there's so much more that goes into it in the context of a large company, in the context of it's just not you, but a team of people in charge of this stuff. And so that's just one element that suggests that we needed to cover off a bigger range. But you want to talk about some of the other things that we've looked at here, Andrea, where we've really made a call in terms of, look, we're covering off a balance, but we're truly not that.
I'm going to talk about the biggest frustration that I had for about 5 years when I'd walk into any room that had the word innovation anywhere around it. And that was the sense that, in the old days, there were these clubhouses, and I've always been a girl, but I was kind of a tomboy girl. But, so there would be like this sign, no girls allowed or whatever, like whoever it was, there'd be hand painted with usually one of the letters backwards, no girls allowed. This is our clubhouse. And it was kind of the same in innovation. It was as if, and I have a joke that might be culturally insensitive, but one of our clients said that, you have these people who come in, the creatives from Milano, and they come in with their berets and they're having they're the creative people. We fly them in from Milan, Italy. They have cooler handwriting than we do. They can make really cool whiteboards. And therefore, the innovators have arrived. And we learned this story from Lego. And the way the Lego story worked. There's a book called Brick by Brick where Lego was going really well. And then they kind of innovated in a way that was chaotic. And it almost led to their downfall. And, we didn't write that book, but it's a really great story. And so I think that that's part of it, is that we had a bad reputation for the creatives because, quote, they'll never get anything to market, right? But we'll have a lot of fun. And then the people with a lot of insight as far as patents and technology and the rational perspective and metrics. And it's like, get those guys out of here. They're going to be, harshing our mellow, get them out of here. So we don't believe it's a no girls allowed situation or a no creatives allowed or a no operations allowed. We figured out finally that you need to have all of those. And so you need a bit of all of these elements. You need people who are thinking this quarter, people who are thinking 25 years out. What's the right balance there? You need people who are like, that's not the way we've done it. And the people who are like, let's do it this new way. Once again, let's have purple bricks at Lego. Maybe that's a good idea, maybe not. But idea generation shouldn't get all of the credit, nor should it get none. So the idea of this, we think of it like a mix board for a sound studio, that every company needs to really calibrate the degree to which this quarter standardized solutions, fresh insight and ideas, continuous improvement, front-end innovation, and their opposites are integrated into delivering on the innovation promise.
Great. I won't belabor this one. I think we have made some stakes here, though, that say, yeah, we're for this type of people. I think one of the ones for sure is we're not for the 25 years out people. There seems to be, you know, we admit using a term called future-proofing in our title may have some semantical challenges from the standpoint that people might think we're futurists, and we probably aren't. You know, there's probably a bit of us that are, but I think we're truly in the spirit of, you know what, anything from 0 to 10 years, and candidly, it's probably more like the 2 to 5 year world that is our real sandbox and playground. We're going to have to spend like a minute on this. This is true of authors, I suppose, Andrea. We're just so into our own material that we're passionate, but to get through this and maybe leave some questions at the end, let's maybe just do some surface layer on this stuff. As I mentioned earlier, we are a practitioner's playbook. We don't make any qualms about that. We are for change agents that work inside companies of more than, call it 50 people. So we're not, you know, startups I think could learn from us, but we're certainly more interested in companies where there are more sophisticated challenges involved in terms of getting innovation across. We have 5 sub-messages here. We chose, I think we actually chose 3 here because we thought this was such an important piece. Andrea, I first came to you and you had, and granted I could have got a less fuzzy version of this, but you had a version of this that showed true promise and potential. I was like, I went back to the early version of it and I was like, wow, it's the same thinking. We've added 2 sub-steps, but it's really see, learn, decide, commit here. And so this was really your seed kind of approach that we've now turned into a very comprehensive, almost operating system. Do you want to mention briefly just what we're looking at here?
Yeah, I have 2 shout outs and an explanation. So number 1, Jamie Fouché, who I think might even be on this call, I came in with an S curve that had like the entire universe. I think it was in a 1-point font. And I kept saying, this is it. This is the E equals MC square of what corporate innovation needs to be. And very patiently, you know, we tried different aspects of it. And also there, Jim Eichner, who is a good colleague, and we did a lot of work in the foundational parts of this. And also Cindy White, who helped to draw it the first time. And she basically said, yeah, you can't do that S curve anymore. And I said, why? And she said, nobody understands it. So the ability to start with this and understand that 4 basics are at the core of what keeps innovation from working. See, learn, decide, commit. And I remember when I was going to business school, it was really important to be quantitative. It was really important that you do predictive analytics and be able to do lots of equations and understand finance. And the soft skills, the people skills, the getting people on board skills were, yeah, we would kind of not take them as seriously. And years later, I won't say how many, but years later, it turns out that commit is the most important of all. Because if you've got a budget that doesn't match your stated purpose, if you've got a vision statement that doesn't ever have commercialization married to it, if you have purpose, and we think purpose is fantastic, and we do a lot of work with companies that are trying to attain sustainability goals or, you know, a vision having to do with a purpose. But unfortunately, sometimes those conversations are siloed and don't get to be blended into the rest of the corporate culture. And so I have got to say that I'm the last person on earth I thought would say this, but all of this comes down to people. It all comes down to alignment, decisions about what matters, getting clear with each other, being honest, saying, you know what, that's a fantastic idea and we're never going to do that. Much kinder to do that than to pretend with $5,000 hackathon prizes, one after the other, to be humoring people into a future that won't exist. And the other part of this is, you know, to allow the human imagination to be really part of this process. You can't get to tomorrow by adding up today and multiplying it by 1.10. You know, it's just not like that. You have to allow whatever it is, whether it's singularity or exponential or cross industry, these other forces, you have to take a break and say, okay, we've been going from A to B to C. Now we have to go from tomorrow to today and make sure we get there. And that's what this whole process is about. See, learn, decide, commit.
And I know, you know what, this was the hero chart. I think if you know, you look at what people may blog or talk about us, this may show up prominently. So justified in terms of taking the extra time on this one. We'll probably have to zip through some of the stuff that comes from here, but I think there's a power in terms of both the simplicity of the see, learn, decide, commit, and the complexity and heft behind what we've done here. We've got 55 supporting tools and canvases and activities that accompany this book. And so we don't leave people stranded with just, you know, floating up here in the ether. We've actually provided new to the world tools that we think are going to be really, really helpful. You know, you've mentioned scale a couple of times already, Andrea. I think we've actually done a specific study on scale. We find, you know, the idea of scaling innovation, you know, certainly it's talked about in marketing terms, it's talked about in SaaS company terms, but scaling innovation really gets a lot of short shrift. And so we've gone deep on this book because we think it's one of the biggest vexing challenges that innovators face. How do you take your early experiments and turn them into something bigger inside your company and outside your company? Any thoughts on this one, Andrea?
No, just a one-liner. You know, roping together a lot of jet skis doesn't create an ocean liner. End of discussion.
I love it. And it's funny, it's in our book, but you've mentioned it differently here. So it's like, you know, I don't have you on repeat here, right? So that's good. And I think we're actually redesigning what a book can be, if I can be so humble to say that. I think, you know, we've got this really interesting thing. My hope is you buy the hard copy of the book because you'll deprive yourself of the left-hand side being very visual in its perspective and the right-hand side being very text in perspective. We've got an interesting form factor where you can bring it anywhere. It's a soft cover, 8.5 by 8.5. We've got canvases that litter the book that you'll look at it and go, I need to know more about that, and jump online to find that. We've got videos. We are hosting this fall an awards. So we're going to do the first annual Futureproofing Awards. We've done a number of webcasts. And so we're going to be asking some of you to actually be judges on that. We have a newsletter and webcasts and a hive of people called 66 Champions. And we have future research studies that we want people to be involved in, and a bank of companies that we want to study from as well. So, you know, we've really, when we say we want this to be a movement, we've really gone beyond the pages of the book to actually try to extend ourselves beyond that. And obviously we've taken an approach with our 11 jump cuts. You know, we're just not like, it's a Spinal Tap reference, I guess, but you know, it just doesn't go to 10, it goes to 11. For those, maybe I'm dating myself, or maybe I've just put myself. I can't believe you just
did a Spinal Tap. That is so perfect.
The Spinal Tap of everything here. So is there anyone in particular on this list that you want to call out as, wow, I think I know which one. It's probably 88, but
No, I'm actually going to go with FN 66 for a lot of reasons. A, down south where I live in the United States, we have Route 66, which is, you know, the hub, the lifeblood of our country for a long time. A lot of road trips there. But I also want to shout out another person, Greg Sittel, who wrote a book called Cascades. He's written a mapping innovation as well. But we realized that this time around in our careers, we want to really do this movement. And the only way to do the movement is to do kind of what TED did with TEDx. We're doing Futureproofing U and X, you know, to get this into the hands of practitioners, to create a movement by having people embrace some of these ideas, probably make it their own to a certain extent. And this, so I think that the FN 66 is the coolest way to do a book, because rather than trying to be like last time, let's be a bestseller, let's get everybody to buy our book the same day, let's try to do that. Instead, what we're trying to do is this is the end of the beginning and the beginning of the end, right? It's the beginning of the next phase of Futureproofing Next, where we have this global guild of champions, and we keep learning from everyone and sharing, and like Johnny Appleseed planting seeds. That's another down south reference, by the way, Sean.
I'm getting some of them. We get all US media. So essentially, you know, outside of my accent, I'm pretty much American too, so. All right, we've got two other big kind of section areas. This one, we had 6 things as part of it. Beyond just being for practitioners, we wanted to even drop it down one step further and go, look, this is a field guide. We've studied intensively what works. And it's also a roadmap where it's like, we're actually giving you the wayfinding along the way to tell you where this is going. And so you know, I think, you know, our proof points are four. I think, you know, this has been tools and techniques and process used by 13,000 teams, 13,000 teams. So we come at this from a point of practice and credibility. We've learned from 250 leading companies. We've actually interviewed many of them. We've been supported by 25 foresight studies that we've done over the last 5 or 6 years, and certainly leaned heavily on the ones we've done over the last 2. And we've curated from 50 plus schools of change. And so as opposed to just kind of leaving it at a status quo, or, you know, just let's live in the world of ideas and utopia, or imitating startups, we've actually looked very intensively at larger companies, what actually works and how can we learn from them. Any things here, Andrea?
Nope, let's keep going.
All righty. We have this secret cadence to each other. We know when, like, okay, we're pressed for time, let's go. This is kind of making that map that we just saw a little bit more focused in terms of what the core components of what we've got going on. And the other thing I'd say here is we probably borrow some thinking from, you know, design, lean, and agile in terms of, you know, scoping out wide before we collapse in and converge again. So certainly our 2 middle steps, learn and decide, have 2 subcomponents where it's definitely a diverge, converge kind of approach to iterate something that looks a little bit better.
I have a quick insert here that we have been in rooms where there have been 400 fantastic ideas, 50 fantastic ideas, all of which are completely defensible. And I won't name the companies, but all over the world. And it's like, these are great ideas. But the problem is that they don't know how to decide. I mean, that's actually an embarrassment of riches that we have in innovation in corporations today. This embarrassment of riches where any of these 400 ideas might likely become, everyone wants to be like the next Netflix, the next Google. But the problem is that if you don't know how to decide, then you end up in this do loop of frustration. And so this process actually helps us decide.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly, both personally having experienced it and professionally having studied it. We also know that this is a generalist art skill. As much as we love our specialists, you know, it's truly some of the best innovators in the world have been able to borrow something from this piece and something from this piece, put it together and create something different. I think more so now than ever, Andrew. I think, you know, configuration is probably more important than invention. You know, you look at the heart of what makes business models work. A lot of it isn't we're inventing completely different stuff. It's we're packaging and reconfiguring what's already there to be something impressive and different. And so these are our 6 kind of worlds. If we had a planetary system of intelligence, this would be the 6 different planets in our worlds that kind of all orbit the sun, and we try to make sense of this. I didn't let you speak on that. Did you want to speak on that, Andrea?
No, I say we keep moving right through because the good stuff's about to happen.
All right. A last one, innovation you can take to the bank. You know, we've been former clients. We've been on the line with big stakes involved and our careers on the line. And we thought, you know what, this is something that we need to make as a promise with our book. Like, how can these things be dependable? How can be things that you can take with confidence and competence to get to a better future? You know, it's tough to see on this one, but we've really looked wide, really wide at the 30 different things that we think are part of a change makers universe. We've called this kind of list the next 30. But if you look at it, I guarantee it, from now on, look at other books that you read on subjects about change or innovation. They get very tribal. They'll end up being in the red space or the purple space or the gray space here. And we've said, bring those walls down. We got to look wide. We got to learn from a wealth of different people. And so these are the 30 kind of areas that we've drawn from to create a different argument. And Andrea, from a perpetual refresh standpoint, you've created the term refresh or perpetual refresh in my brain. There's about 50 different words that I've learned from you over the last year that just kind of rattle around my head. You know, we're trying to create some sustainability here, aren't we? We're just not kind of, here's a point in time where it's like, you know, do the offsite, do the hackathon and walk away. Now, this is creating sustainable skills for the future, isn't it?
If you think about a spreadsheet and you can have absolute and relative value. So you can either put 17 or let's say 42 for people who know Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. Or you can say the number that is the closest to the number of jobs that were lost this year. So when something is the second category, you're in a state of perpetual refresh, because as data changes around you, you're able to go back and make your company align to the change that needs to happen to address it. So that's what this is about. We say one thing here, which is that learning and mastery are actually the leading drivers of competitive advantage. Being able to be in a state of perpetual refresh is one of the best ways to be competitively ahead.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think the pin that dropped for us maybe is the fact that we're probably just as much about training as we are, about kind of spreading the good news and actually working with practitioners to make stuff happen. I think we're trying to enable people as well. So this is a summary of the 24 reasons. You can grab a screenshot if you like, but I'm sure we're going to be sending this presentation back out to you later. And we're going to zip through some of the other things that we said we're going to cover off here. Why is it different or special? Andrea, do you have just one quick thing that says, if you think about our book, it's different than anything you've read before?
It's that there's always a group of people around the world who can help you get over your stuck mindset. Because you read the book, and that's just the beginning. You have people around the world who've also read it, who have great connections for you to be able to make, because that moment where you're stuck is what we're all about, how to get you unstuck.
And I would just add, I think, whether we're a movement or just a set of resources and extensions, we're going to make you want to explore. Like, you're going to learn something and you're going to want to dive deeper into one thing or another. It might not be our entire book. There might be parts of it that you go, I don't like that, or I've seen that before. But I guarantee you there's going to be something in our book that is new, that is going to be different, that's going to challenge your thoughts. And you're going to want to dive deeper on it. My hope is we'll have a set of resources to help you there. Who is this book for? We have a wealth of different people. My hope is any commercially viable book we do. There are people in charge of change. There are the people that are the champions of change, the leadership. There are people that support that change, and there are the people that are surrounding that universe of people. And a wealth of different reasons why they would want it. Kind of a robust list here. Andrea, any thoughts in terms of who this book is for?
I think this book is for people who like to pass books on to other people, period. You read it, you have answers, you have questions, you pass it on, you get into a conversation. That's pretty much the summary.
Oh, Andrea, you're not acting like a book author here. It's like you read it, you keep it for yourself, and then buy 30 of these books.
Yeah, well, this is, when you have a movement, you have to be able to, put your ego aside. Yeah, buy a ton of the books and give them as Christmas presents. Is that better?
Much better.
Okay, there you go.
The accountant hat in me is very happy based on that caveat. So there's 12 chapters. It's 244 pages. We've got 55 different canvases. A lot of times we're going to actually point people to our online universe of resources, because you're going to be looking at a canvas that I really want to explore that more. We've interviewed a ton of people, but 11 of them have surfaced to make it into our book. We've got 20 what I would call mini essays. These could become books themselves, but we've spent just 600 words kind of defining a particular part of this agenda. And then some landscapes and some stuff. We did a research study last year called the Corporate Innovation Playbook, which factors heavily into some of the evidence-based weight that we put behind things. Any additions here, Andrea?
Nope, let's move on.
All righty. What does it look like? This gives you a sampling of what some of the pages look like. As you can see, we have colored wayfinding. I guess chapter 3 is pink. Maybe I'm letting that out of the book. And I'm
wearing the color of chapter 3 because it's my favorite. It's my branded outfit, but I do have a comment about this. So people have been liking our cultural references. So there's a singer, I guess, spoken word / rapper called Common, and Common wrote this great book a few years back, and I read it. I got the physical book. On the right-hand side was Common telling his story. And I've seen him in concert, and he's pretty edgy at the time, telling his story of how his career came about. And I swear, on the left-hand side, his mother, true story, had written her version, including comments about what he wrote. So it's like, I didn't know you had that girlfriend in 7th grade. What? So that's how our book is laid out. On the right-hand side and the left-hand side, there are two different perspectives on the same topic. And if you put them together, you can get to your own truth.
I love it. Way to, you know what? You're always surfacing new stuff. I don't know where you're going sometimes, but it somehow you pull it out.
Who reads Common's autobiography? No one. That would be me.
Well, we started this book by talking about Eminem, so I truly, I think we are wannabe rappers, right? I think you got one shot, right, to make a good impression. 15 ways people that are listening to this webcast, and you know, we'll be honest, like we've been so focused on book and some guild stuff, like we're just getting out of ourselves and actually extending this movement out to the world this month. You know, we'd love it if you buy the book, tell some friends, join and repost on social media. We're on most of them. We've refrained from Facebook, but personally we're there too, I suppose. 201, like just, you know, hopefully, you know, provide any praise. We actually have a place where you can actually provide a testimonial or praise for the book. We're really curious and interested. We'd love your involvement. We also have a survey online that we're testing out some of our messages. So we'd love to get your thoughts. We'll share the link in a minute. We have an upcoming awards thing where we'd love nominations and judging. We have webcasts every 2 weeks, probably 3 a month now with our kind of global tour, Andrea, that we've got going. And we will actually host a beta test of our training in November. And if you're interested in joining that, we would love to hear from you. 401, like this is getting into the deeper kind of weeds of our book. You know, we're just as interested in actually doing the work versus talking about it. We have platinum, gold, and silver kind of partner opportunities that we've enunciated online as well. And then as well, on Thursday, we are having a Futureproofing 66 champion session. These are the people that know us so well that if we committed a crime, they probably wouldn't tell other people. If you're that, please join us. We're in the business of leading geographic and functionally specific salons in the future. If you want to lead one of those, please let us know. And obviously hire us for things down the road. Let's be bald-faced about it, Andrea. We want to work with specific partners that kind of glom on to what we're doing here. Any thoughts in terms of participation here, Andrea?
Well, we have some questions from the audience, and so I'll share that and weave it in. How might this book help solo practitioners, other consultants? And basically, this is why we wrote it. We wrote it so that internal people, the intrapreneurs, the people who are in corporate investment and corporate venture, who are asked to look at a portfolio, don't know where to place their bets, and a whole world of people who are trained in either a design thinking or an agile or a lean startup, and they're hitting a wall, for them to have the other pieces of the puzzle to be able to be more effective. So we would love, actually, our favorite thing to do, I'm just going to tell you, we want you to invite us into whatever company you've got and give an hour-long or a 90-minute presentation and get the conversation going. Let it be on our shoulders to get people involved. You can tell us if we should or shouldn't say Eminem, Common, and references to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. But we would love to come. And so invite us to come into your organizations. We would love to come and work with you. And second of all, we would love to meet you and your friends. So have a salon. This is a social movement. So we would love to be hired, you know, to do our launch in your companies. We would love to be connected with you to lead salons and get others involved as kind of a spread the word. So those are my two favorites. If you're on this call or listening in or watching, contact us, get on our website, futureproofingnext.com, and say, hey, let's have you come on out to fill in the name of the country, fill in the time slot, and we'll be there.
Agreed. And here's how it rolls out just from a time sequence. We're kind of looking at the fall as kind of being the launch, if you will, some level of sustaining after that, and then the expansion of that. I won't go through all of these, but there's research, there's resources. You know, we plan to be pretty busy in 2021. And we really think, you know what, it's funny, for those that are listening in that have authored something or have published something, you have all these self-doubts at the beginning and you wonder where it's going. Truly at this stage, I think myself, if I can speak on your behalf, Andrew, I think we have a confidence about the argument that we're making. We believe that it's not only speaking about the future, but part of the future as well. And so I think knowing that we have all these other different hits that we're going to actually pulse out suggests that we may extend this movement for a much bigger period of time. A lot of different ways to participate. And I'm going to point you to, you can go to the book online. We've got 4 different links there that offer up a range of different opportunities. Certainly 2 of the bigger ones are joining our Champions network, and as well looking seriously at, you know, whether it's a keynote on the low level or some type of workshop or training in the mid-level, or looking at a sponsored tour of some sort. I know we're in some deep discussions with a couple of different partners in terms of doing that. The pre-order link we will be making available today. We'll be sending this presentation out afterward. We'll be sending it to you. The actual book itself will arrive shortly thereafter, but in the interim, we will send you chapter 1. We'll get you started and hopefully get you salivating to read the rest of it like a good book or a good Netflix special. This is who we are, some of our bios. You know, sometimes we look really good on pictures, Andrea, just maybe better than we do
Those are pre-pandemic pictures, that's right.
Maybe, yeah. This is our general promise when people ask us, well, what do you really do? I think when you boil it down, we're trying to offer up solutions that lead clients, readers, in this case, to better, bigger, bolder, simpler futures. Here's what some of our friends are saying about the book and our movements that have kind of seen some of the early work. Hopefully you can add to those by jumping online to this place where we ask you in 4 different areas whether you want to participate in our books movement. And we also have a global tour. Every single month we will be doing a different geography in the world for the next year. And so Europe, we're coming at you on October 20th. So if anybody's listening to this, please join us, and we will be looking at, I think there's 43 countries in Europe, Andrea, wanting to get 1 member from each one of those countries joining us for our October 20th Global Book Tour. And there it is in Bright Lights, Big City. We also pulse in some deeper thoughts about things. Next, I guess on October 13th, we're having a discussion about alternative realities and immersion. And I'm really looking forward to trying to figure out who has got the best AR that can actually approximate being at work. I'm a little bit tired of Zoom. I'll be honest. I'd love to know what's out there in terms of creating that level of engagement. Andrea, what's our message takeaway? We're wrapping up here. We may have some time for some questions, but what's your big message takeaway here?
My biggest message is innovation has failed us. It's the most unfortunate, saddest awareness that I came to a few years back. And so we have set out to bring optimism, and we call it rational optimism, to that notion. It's not okay to live in a world where innovation is sitting with different bits and pieces, people being frustrated, people being tense, people being at each other's throats because my budget is not going for your idea. My idea is not worthy of your patent mindset. It's not, that friction has got to go away. And we also believe in a very positive future. So if we can get past all of the frustration and start thinking, as we've said earlier, you know, the Ennis Olson line, how can we have agency over the future? How can we imagine something that is so different and yet so possible if we future-proof? So that's the takeaway, is we can do better, and we can only do better with a future-proofing mindset together.
I love it. I'm just building on that point. I mean, I don't think we're ranters. Like we get into situations and try to improve them. So our book is not a rant, but it certainly is a healthy dissatisfaction with the status quo. And I think just to build on what you were saying, just innovation needs to get out of its tiny little boxes. You know, it has to envision itself as a bigger thing, a much better driver of its company's growth agenda, and hopefully a much more credible kind of function / operation within the eyes of the CEO and the board. So that's hopefully what you may get from this book. I know we've had some chat windows, and the problem with Zoom is the person that manages the presentation never gets to see what those are. So I'll ask Andrea if there's any one or two things that have hit you there. This is where you can get in touch with us, though, and certainly our website is growing and building, and one of the reasons why we've delayed so long in some respects is we've got about 80 different web pages that we need to serve up to support our book, and so they'll be happening over the next week and 2 weeks as well.
So
Andrea?
one quick thing I'll mention from some of the incredible chat. It's so great to have everybody here. We have a large group of people with us. We are super excited. It is really about the community. I'm going to say www. So that here's the website, futureproofingnext.com, because some people listen to us.
Right.
And also, we really want to meet you. So not just because of the pandemic, I've been in lockdown for, I don't know, 9 months now, forget how to be in public. But we really want to do these virtual salons. We really want to connect with you. Sean and I really want to get out and spread this word. So we want your ideas. Use the innovative mindset to think about how we can not just get hired to do the work with companies of yours and others, but also to create hubs to spread this knowledge. And that's why everything is called like future-proofing U and X, right? So it's like, we're gonna have training and also allow it to go into the field. So we are open to ideas. We really wanna meet you. We really wanna work with you. And thank you so much for all of the challenges you've given us and all the support and hilarious comments today in the chat. I think this wins the prize for the funniest chat. We talked about we talked about Borges short stories. We talked about Bill and Ted. We talked about Hitchhiker's Guide. We talked about Common. I mean, we've gone everywhere, and yet we end up the same place at Future Proofing.
I feel deprived.
Final tap. Thank you, Jill.
Zoom's got to figure out how the presenter can actually get access to the chat too, because that seems to be our my nemesis. But just from here, whoever is watching this presentation, certainly we're going to upload this to our website pages. This was our, I guess, our first trial run to the universe. We'll have many more. So we'll probably be perfectly minted by the time 4 months from now rolls around. We will send you both the pre-order link, this presentation, and a wealth of other resources that may or may not help you. My hope is they do. And we'll send those to you very shortly after the webcast that you're seeing today is airing. If you're catching this on YouTube or sometime in the future, certainly join us at some of the links and send us a message below. We authors are like late night DJs. We just really love to know what people are thinking about our stuff, and sometimes question, is there anybody out there in the universe that cares as much about this stuff as we do? And I think there is. Andrea, any other parting thoughts before we see people into the future?
No, I'm elated.
All right. Elated. I thought your name was Andrea.
Don't go there. You were doing so well without the fun.
We're so professional until now. In a different life, we usually put hats on at the end of a meeting. It's one of our rituals of one of our communities. Please don't, Andrea. No, we're trying to be credible here. That's for that community, okay? So really, just once again, I really want to thank everybody. One person in particular that I don't necessarily thank enough is Andrea Cates, because we kind of just have traded 11,000 emails with each other, and it's just been a joy to actually work with Andrea in terms of kind of hatching this to the world. So I wanted to do a public shout out on that one. And outside of all the things that we'll probably end up doing with you, we will see you in the future.